DreAllDay.com.
Was I nervous during 12th grade tryouts? No, absolutely not. I knew I was going to make the team that year. Do I believe in God or higher powers? Yes, I do believe in higher powers. So the question was, what led me into the entrepreneurship journey? That's a great question. First thing was that I knew I didn't want the same life that my parents had. I saw them working hard every day, but they were just working enough to stay above water, working enough to feed us, pay the bills, and then had to keep doing it over and over again. Put gas in the car, and it was doing the same thing over and over again. It was kind of like running on a treadmill. I couldn't really verbalize that, but then I listened to this dude speaking named Robert Kiyosaki. He wrote a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. If you're listening to this and you never read that book, I command you to go get that book and read it. I don't care what you want to do for a living. I don't care if you want to be a swimmer, if you want to be an architect, if you want to be a football player. Read the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, because the philosophies in that book, the principles and philosophies apply to everything. So the reason that was one reason that I wanted to get into entrepreneurship. Another reason was because I saw everybody I saw around me. I didn't have any entrepreneurs around me. Hold that, be phenomenal. That question, you got to come back with it because I'm still answering the previous question. Everybody that I saw around me, I didn't have a lot of entrepreneurs around me growing up. Almost everybody in my family was an employee. So looking around at those people, I didn't see anybody who was like well off financially. I didn't see anybody who did what they wanted to do, let alone be well off. You know, everybody had a job. And usually when people talked about their job, and y'all can tell me if you relate, like I would listen to my parents, my aunts, my uncles talk about their jobs, and they talk about it like they had to go to work. Like, yo, I gotta go to work tomorrow. S. Balani, I told you, any drills that you want to work on, go to my YouTube channel and search the thing that you want to get better at, and it's all there. All right, but as far as what I was saying, my aunts, uncles, grandparents, my parents, they would talk about work like it was something that they had to do. And they were like, damn, I gotta go to work tomorrow. Or, you know, I gotta go to the job tomorrow. I gotta go to the gig tomorrow. And nobody was ever excited to go to work. I never heard anybody sound excited to go to work. None of the people in my family growing up were excited to go to work. And I couldn't verbalize this, but in the back of my mind, my subconscious mind, I used to think, why are people not excited to go to work? I mean, they be at work all day. Like, I leave the house to go to school. My mom leaves the house to go to work. My dad leaves the house to go to work. And when I get home, they still not home yet. So shouldn't they be excited to do that? They spending like half their life there. I know that's how they make money. But why are they not excited? Why do they talk about their jobs like it's like they got to go to jail? Like they talking about their jobs like somebody's forcing them to do it. And I knew why they were doing it, because they had to support their kids and their families. That's my aunts, my uncles, my grandparents. Everybody had to do it for that reason. But first of all, why is nobody excited about it? And second of all, why don't anybody seem to be like well off or rich financially? Nobody was. In the area that I grew up in like a lower middle class neighborhood. I wasn't in like the lowest of the low. I wasn't in the slums or the projects. But looking around at everybody around me, the stuff that I would see on TV, like these lavish houses and the lavish cars and the great, vacations and stuff like that, I knew they existed because I saw them on TV and I would read about them in magazines. So I'm like, why doesn't anybody in my family have that? And I couldn't. My parents were kind of strict. My mom at least was strict, and so she wasn't the type of mom you could go to and just be like, "Mom, why we ain't rich? why don't we have a Mercedes Benz, Mom? Why don't we? Why do y'all not seem happy to go to work?" These are all things that once I got older and I started to learn more, I was able to surface these to my conscious mind and actually think about it in a way that I could kind of share it with you how I do now. But when I was 13, 14, 17, I couldn't understand these things because I didn't know any better. All I knew was what I saw. So when I saw my parents, I saw my grandmother, I saw my aunts, uncles, there were no business owners. Actually, my uncle did a little bit of business ownership, but he seemed to be always working. He was always working. And it didn't seem like he really loved what he was doing. It seemed like he just found a way to be the owner of it. But it wasn't like he was excited to go do what he was doing. He had a carpet laying business. I think he still has it. I think my uncle still does carpet laying, and I think he does other jobs on the side. So yeah, please y'all stop interrupting me with other questions while I'm still answering this question, because I'm not going to get to it. So relax, calm down. So look. While my uncles, I would see my uncle. He was a business owner. I would see him out working. He had like a carpet laying business. I don't know too many people who are excited about laying carpet. Now, I know there are some who are. I know he was the owner of his business, because sometimes he would call me. He'd be like, Dre, you want to come work with me? And he had like 3 or 4 sons. He was like, your cousins, they about to come help me lay carpet, and I'm going to pay y'all for helping me lay the carpet. And I'm like, cool, you going to pay me to help lay the carpet? I'll go do it. I'm 12 years old. I ain't got no money. He give me $5, $10. I'll go help him lay the carpet and stuff like that. But he wasn't excited about it, and he was always working. And again, he wasn't rich. So I'm looking around. I had an idea what rich was. To me, rich was like, somebody got a Benz or a Beamer, or what's this, Bentley, Beamer, Benz, Bentley, something like that. They got a big house with all these rooms in it that nobody even stays in. They got all this grass. They got a butler. You know what I'm talking about. That was my vision of rich. That's not really what rich is, but those lavish things, that's what I thought was rich. So I'm looking around. I didn't see anybody around me who had it, but I knew it existed. So that's one reason why once I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I started to get the information. That was the first thing. When I heard Robert Kiyosaki, I don't know where I was. It was probably around like 2003 when I was a junior in college. And I heard Robert Kiyosaki. I read his book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. And if you haven't read that book, one of the things he talks about early in the book was him and one of his childhood friends. When he was a kid, he went to his friend's dad, because Robert had a dad who always worked. His dad worked like 40 hours a week, always working, always struggling just to make ends meet. Basically how my parents were. And my parents were great people. Let me not say this like my parents were bad. My parents were excellent. They did what they had to do to take care of their kids, put food in their back, and they raised me to be the man that I am today. So they did an excellent job with what they had, but they weren't entrepreneurs. So anyway, Robert Kiyosaki, his parents were similar to my parents, always working. Well, his dad was always working, but his friend's dad was an entrepreneur. He worked too, but he didn't work as hard. He enjoyed what he did. He owned like real estate. He was in real estate investing, and his dad understood money. That was the main thing that Robert got out of his friend's dad, and that's what he wrote the book about. So just to give you tell you a quick story from out of the book. If you haven't read it yet, you must read this book. It's called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I don't care what you want to do for a living, what you majoring in school. Read this book. I don't care if you want to be a basketball player and make $1 billion. Read the book so you know what to do with the money and how to use it. But anyway, he said he was talking to his childhood friend's dad, and his dad said, hey, y'all want to work for me? And they said, yeah, because he's like, I'll pay you money. And he said, yeah. And his dad said, listen, the first principle you have to understand is never work for money. You never want to sell your time for money. Don't sell your life for money. Y'all understand that? And then he said, all right, well, just to test them out, because they were little kids. So the dad said, let me test y'all out and to make sure y'all understood what I just said. Come work for me. I'll pay you $2 a day to work for me. And the little boys, they sitting there looking at him like, you just told us not to work for money. So they said, no, we won't do it. Well, they didn't say anything. They just sat there quietly, just looking at him. He said, oh, y'all want to take $2? Or how about I give you $5? I'll give you $5 a day to come work for me. And they still was just sitting there like, they didn't say nothing. He said, all right, how about $20 a day to come work for me? And Robert's saying in the book as it's going on, he's like, this is more money than I've ever seen in my life. He's offering me $20, but he just told me not to do this. So I'm going to just test it out and see how far he goes. He was like, all right, $100. I'm going to give you $100 a day to come work for me. And they both kept resisting. And the point of it is he tied it all into a story the rich dad did. And read the book. I'm not going to try to explain the book. Read the book if you really want the information. But he said, the main thing that you got to understand is not to work for money. And when I watched him, he was doing this thing called the Cashflow Quadrant. If y'all ever heard of the Cashflow Quadrant, you got employee, small business owner, employee, small business owner, big business owner, and investor. So basically 4 things. You got E as employee, S as small business owner, B as a big business owner, and I as an investor. And just to give you a quick synopsis of what that means, an employee trades their time for money. Robert Kiyosaki, the title of this book is called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Just look up that title, you'll find it. You can't get it wrong. Nobody else wrote that book. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So employee is the type of person who trades their time for money. So y'all know, I'm sure all of you know some people who are employees. If you're in school right now, you know an employee because your teacher's an employee. They go to work, you work for a certain amount of time, you get paid a certain amount of money. Even if you're not an hourly employee, even if you're on salary, is the same thing, because if you don't go to work, you lose your entire salary. So it's not an exact number of hours. And usually when you're on salary, it's worse because they make you work more hours and you're not getting paid extra for it. So the thing is, an employee trades their time for money. And y'all have to understand that time is the most valuable resource you have as a human being. Once your time is gone, it's over. Your life is over. You can lose money and make money back. You can't lose time and make it back. The second one is a small business owner. It means somebody who starts their own business, but they're doing all the work for their business, which means like my uncle, he was a carpet layer, but every time somebody called him to lay a carpet, he had to go do all the work. So even though he had his own business, he kind of quote unquote controlled his destiny. He basically, they call it owning a job. So you're the owner, but it's still your job, because every time somebody calls you and wants to pay you, guess what you got to do? Trade your time to get that money. And I've been in that situation. I've been in basically all 4 quadrants. So anyway, the second one is small business owner. The third is a big business. Let's say the investor. Let's go talk about the investor, which is the 4th quadrant. An investor is a person who takes their money and they invest it maybe in stock market, maybe in real estate. They get their money to work for them. And that requires a certain type of education that people had to get that, called financial education. And the other one is a big business owner. That means that person owns a system or a network, which means they have other people who work and they actually make money off the efforts of other people. So if any of you know someone who owns a business, or you know someone who owns a job, or not owns a job, has a job. If you personally have a job, the person who signs your check is a big business owner, because they pay you a certain amount of money to work. They make money off the efforts of your work every single day. And now they got more than one of you. So whoever else works with you, your business, the owner of your business, the person who signs your checks, makes money off your work every single day, and they pay you a certain percentage, which is less than actually what you're creating for them. Because if I'm paying you $10 an hour, I gotta be making at least $11 an hour in order for it to make sense for me business wise. So if I'm paying you 11 and you only bringing in 10, I'm gonna fire you, or I'm gonna lower your pay, or you're gonna have to quit. One of those has to happen, because I'm gonna go out of business if I'm paying you more than you're actually bringing in. So anytime you're an employee, you're never making what you're actually worth, because they have to pay you less than what you're bringing in for them. Otherwise, the business would be breaking even. It's not actually a business. There's no profits. So that's what got me into entrepreneurship. Once I read that book, I said, oh, that makes sense. And sometimes people say, well, how can I become a big business owner? I don't have a lot of money to start business. There's a lot of ways you can do it now. You can start a passive income business on the internet. You can start blogging. You can start YouTubing. You can start creating online courses about the information that you know. You could join a MLM, a network marketing company. And that way you can leverage the efforts of other people for a low investment startup cost. So that's what got me into wanting to be an entrepreneur. So who else has a question? And there's a lot more that I could go into with that, but I'll stop it right there and take somebody else's question. Would I ever work a 9 to 5? I have worked plenty of 9 to 5s, but I will never ever work a 9 to 5 again in my life. Footwork drill when you don't have a jump rope or a ladder. Go get one, or you could use the lines on the street for a ladder. Same thing. How do you create space with your handle? Go to my YouTube channel. Any questions about how to do something on a basketball court is already covered on my YouTube channel. I will not cover it in words here. You rather see it, right, than me talk about it. Yes, please stop asking me questions about what to do on a basketball court. If you don't know, that means you ain't worked on your game enough. What's my favorite food? Bananas, shrimp. To be in the B quadrant, do you need to be in the S quadrant first? No, hell no. You can you can start making courses online right now on like udemy.com. You can start your own webinar, put it on your own website, and you can create the webinar once and have people pay for it over and over and over again. Just have it on a continuous loop. You don't need to be you're not owning a job then. You own a network. You own a system, rather. You own a system of that webinar. Somebody's going to buy that webinar while you're sleeping tonight. You made money in your sleep and you didn't have to do any work. You did the work once and you get paid for it over and over and over again. That's a system. So no, you don't need to be in the S quadrant in order to go in the B quadrant. You could jump straight to the B quadrant if you want to. What kinds of habits are good to have? Ask me a more specific question. Please give me something more specific, MK, about habits. Habits for what? I mean, I can name a million habits, but give me something more specific so I can kind of have a target for my answer. But what got me into business ownership again, I didn't see anybody who had that stuff. So when I heard Robert Kiyosaki, I still didn't know anything about it. But when I listened to him, I said, this just makes sense. I didn't have my vision clouded by what other people had told me. I knew that my parents were not rich. I knew there were people in the world who were rich, but the people around me were not rich. So I knew I needed to do something different than the people around me were doing and the people who had raised me had done in order for me to get something different. I knew I had to do something different to get something different. So that's what led me to seeking the information. And I took the information and applied it, and still to this day, still applying it. All right, where do you get your financial education from? Yeah, you can get it from reading books. You can get it from taking online courses. You can even read blog posts. There are blogs where people talk about money. Robert Kiyosaki has a blog online right now. He talks about money. Just look up Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki. Who else? Tony Robbins talks about it. It's a lot of people who talk about, money, finances, how to deal with your money. And you just all you gotta do is ask yourself this: does the information that they're saying make sense to me based on what I already know? So if the information is going over your head, you're reading the wrong information. You need to read something that can relate to where you're at. So my recommendation is read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Once you learn that, then you'll know what type of information to look for going further. So read that book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And there was another one, I can't even remember the name of the book. It was two that I read really early on and really got me thinking differently about, what to do with my life, what to do with my time. So even, y'all gotta understand that basketball players are employees. Did y'all know that? When you play for a basketball team, somebody gives you a paycheck every 2 weeks or every month or however often that you get paid. Somebody's signing that check. The business owner is signing that check. So, LeBron James makes $20 million. Imagine how much the guy who pays him is making if he could pay LeBron 20. All right, so you will never make exactly what you're worth when you work for somebody else. I don't care how much money it is. You know how much money LeBron James actually makes for the Cleveland Cavaliers compared to how much he actually gets paid? He's underpaid. Now, there are a whole bunch of players who are overpaid because guys like LeBron are underpaid. So the money that he ain't getting could go to a whole bunch of other people. But eventually, you always want to put yourself in the ownership side, the business ownership side, because that's the only way you'll have control.
Thanks for checking out this video. Make sure you follow all my top content up here. Follow me on all your favorite social networks right over here. And make sure you are subscribed to catch all the new content I put on this channel every single day.